Okay, so we're gonna again readdress the question that we had started with last week, which was, what is health? So now I'm gonna do something absolutely crazy. Instead of asking the people, I asked who? WHO, right? Which today we have lost a bit of the credibility of the WHO, the World Health Organization. It seems that they have interests in different things, as we know, in the world, and interested in keeping China happy. But the WHO does have an official definition. Their definition: health is a state of complete or peak physical, mental, or social well-being, not merely the absence of disease. That is their definition of health. After last week, when a lot of people came up with very beautiful ideas of what health is, that's the official, probably, representation of the modern medicine way of looking at it. Modern medicine, in truth, until recently, felt that it was the absence of disease. But they've updated this a few years ago and added the idea of health. Phone here for kids. They've updated it to what we call this complete or peak state of both physical, mental, and social well-being. So again, in short, I'm not going to go my whole story again, but I, unfortunately, as many of the other people in the modern world, was not exactly at peak physical, mental, and social state. And what I found was I was suffering from a number of things. And I think many of us, over our life, we have these like slow, degrading feelings or little undertows of, we would call, lack of health that we sort of like get used to. And this is like really not the way it's supposed to be. But yet modern medicine, when you go to most modern medicine doctors, they will tell you, okay, this is normal. You're an older person. You're getting older. I was getting older. I was 30 years old, right? You're getting older. And, this is normal that you should have pain. This is normal that you shouldn't feel well all the time. This is normal that you should have headaches, that your digestion should have problems going to the bathroom. I'm saying hi to the Fiedlers. I see the Fiedlers are here, Sarah and Moshe Fiedler.
Great.
And so
nice.
that's we've gotten used to, unfortunately, this mentality of thinking I can feel not peak most of the time, and I can feel even a bit kind of crummy a lot of the time, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and even socially. And we just got used to that. And I had gotten used to that, just like most people in the modern medicine world. But fortunately, I can say fortunately, I got very sick, because that's usually when the wake-up call starts, is when the person really starts to feel crummy. And it usually takes feeling really bad, whether it's pain, headaches, overwhelming digestive problems, or other real illnesses, heart problem. That's usually when the wake-up call comes. And this is hurtful, I could tell you, because I know then when I remember way back then when Ginat and Sheldon, they had brought Rick from, I think it was from Europe. And I still remember, it was the funniest thing. I remember this couple, this older lady, religious lady, and she had her son who was unfortunately sick with cancer. And they heard the whole idea of macrobiotics, and Rick looked at them and examined him and told him exactly the diet. But the lady, when she sat down in the end, she said, "What am I going to drink with my coffee? What am I going to put in my coffee? There's no sugar, and there's no sweet and low." And I can still remember your face, Ginat, like trying to be so sympathetic and empathetic and understand, wait a minute, there's no coffee, there's no sugar, there's no this. There's a new way of life that he can have, maybe a new lease on life. But yet the people usually at a point that they're so entrenched in the ways of their life and their things that they're used to, that it's very hard to change. And usually the only thing that can make the change is major pain or major illness. And that's when the wake-up call comes. So I first want to say that most people don't know how, and it's difficult, but we need to really look at illness sometimes as a blessing. It's a blessing because it's a wake-up call for many of us to make that adjustment in life and do something positive with ourselves. So we're going to come back a little bit to the idea that I had put forth the last time, and I'm going to drill down in it a little bit. This idea of what is basically based on an ancient principle that was brought in Greek philosophy, Roman philosophy, and it was integrated into Judaism. It's brought even in the most earliest Kabbalic sources, the idea of the four basic, we would call them elements. It's hard to say because I understand that what even the Talmud and the Kabbalic idea isn't talking about the particular element. And the four are known. They are ground, water, air, and fire. But they didn't mean those four things in that sense, in the literal sense. They meant different energy levels, different energy levels that we live. And we are made of that. In fact, in Kabbalic understanding, the whole creation is always just a combination of those four things, depending upon the proportions that they are. And those proportions of those four things regulate all of life. And it's important to address each one of them. So the first one we had shown, and maybe I'll put it up in a moment, the ground level, that is earth, the ground level of a person. And that's the first thing that we need to address. And that's where the starts of a diet, of macrobiotics, or other forms of diet come in. What are we attempting to try to do? We're attempting to take charge of the natural, I wouldn't call instinct, the natural cause of what ground is. What does the ground want? What does it want? It wants rest. It wants not to have any change. And it's looking also for the basic survival of itself. It's a survival form. So the person on the most ground level, he's eating to survive. But if a person wants to uplift and rectify that level, the person then needs to change a little bit the way that they're eating and integrate the spirit side of the ground. The spirit side of the ground would say, okay, let's think about what we're going to eat. That's now integrating the mind, the higher part of the human, together. The person would integrate their mind and overcome the natural desires. Because many of these systems, the four systems that we're going to discuss, we're going to see that they have their own desire for their own survival on that specific level, and almost disregard in a certain sense the other levels. The ground level is a little bit disregarding the desire of the wind level. The wind level is disregarding the level of the water level. The water level is disregarding the level of the fire. The ground level is out for pure survival and maintaining the body on the most minimal survival level. Well, if we think about that, what would happen? A person would then be on a caloric binge or bind, right? The person, all they would want to do is just fill up their body with calories. In fact, that's the way our brain is wired on a very simplistic level. When we eat something sugar, what does it taste? We get great. Wow, this is sugar. This is unbelievable. Your brain immediately says, I got a tremendous amount of caloric intake. And this is a great now source for calories. But we need to overcome the simplicity of that system in the sense of its simple desire of just survival, and we need to overcome it with a more lofty look at that system. And the more lofty look at that system is what? I'm going to eat for the long run. That was why years ago, and it was known, I remember then when I was studying macrobiotics at the beginning, many of the best long distance runners, super athletes, ultra athletes, eat a macrobiotic type diet. Why? Because they're looking for long-term energy. Complex carbohydrates are what give us that long-term energy. We're not looking for that quick bind. We're not looking for that quick fix, that quick caloric intake of white flour and sugar and many of the other things that are really our simple ground level being wants. So we raise it to a certain level. There's other ways to raise it also on the ground level. It's how we eat. If we eat by chewing, think about that. There was somebody that taught chewing last week. It was amazing. And I remember years ago also Ginat talking a lot with me and Sheldon. Well, how much so important to chew. But when I started thinking about it, chewing is really integrating the greater human being into your food process. Why? Because your natural desire is what? Swallow it down. Just like almost like a dog. You know, you just warfing it down. Just warfing it down. And we are not meant to warf it down. We are meant to chew our food. Be patient. Another one that's a killer for me is when you're eating, to be present during the eating and not be doing and multitasking. We think that this is a great praise in the modern world. I'm going to be multitasker. No, you're not a multitasker. Now you're eating. To be present during your eating, to be with the food and get from it what was meant to feed our bodies and keep it well. That's on a simple body level. So there are many of the things that we need to do. A, the fact that we become a conscious chooser of what we choose to eat. We decide, yes, this I do eat, this I don't eat. This I eat in another half an hour. This I will eat. This I won't eat. That whole integrating of the higher level of the person into the world of ground, that can bring about healing on the body level and ultimately even to a higher level within the person. And many people are healed just by chewing, just by being mindful when they eat, just by eating the right foods, eating something of probably a plant-based macrobiotic sort type diet that is balanced to their body. This also leads us to something that's very difficult for many people. It's how to feel their inner compass when it comes to their body. This only can come when you are a clean person. I freaked out. I tell you the honest truth when this happened to me, because I had then done the recommended cleansing diet. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing, wow, once my body's clean of all the junk that I've been eating for years and abusing my body, and when I only ate basically brown rice for 10 days, all of a sudden, I was able to really feel, wow, this food is good for me. This food isn't. I would just take a drink of milk, and within a minute, I would start to see that my body was showing me. My body was showing me that this is not for you, Bitzalel. This is not for you. That's why even last week when we discussed the idea of a very personal journey, this is a personal journey of every single person. But the way to become personal is to take control of our physical being, to take control of how we eat, when we eat, why we eat, what we eat. All of those W's are very powerful. When we eat them, why we eat them, where we eat them, and what we eat, after all. That is the most basic thing in the decision of a person wanting to bring, and as we explained it then, it was called in Hebrew, a kli, the vessel. Our body is our vessel. Our body is our vessel, and we need on that level to rectify our body so that we can be a place where the other parts of our spirit can dwell within us. As we go higher, we go to the level of the water. A person is made of water. We are mostly water, in fact. And that is somewhat reflected, in a certain sense, by what I would call the motion. Because water, in a spiritual level, represents motion. We know that water is very, very, always in a sense in our mind, in motion. That's how we envision water. Yet, water desires something. It desires the same thing in a certain sense that the ground desires. These are Kabbalic ideas, but they're very true. They seem to make 100% sense. We always see that the ground always wants to rest. The same thing. Water always goes down to a place and it wants to reach a place to rest. It has more motion naturally to it, but it wants to rest. So how do we overcome that natural desire of the water to reach its resting place? We take action. We act as a 70% water human being. We are movement. We do the most simple movement, which is what? Walking. Walking is so powerful. I have here my wife again. She's at work. She's in school teaching. And she, thank God, took on herself about 15 years or 16 years ago to just walk every day. Halavai, I would have done it. And I got to now work on doing exercise. But my wife, just that walking every day, because we are a helech. A helech means a walker. We are a mover. We are meant to be movers. Even in the spiritual realm, we are considered movers, because we spiritually can rise up, we can spiritually go down. We are movers. And water, our way to rectify the water within us is to have a certain amount of motion. And that's represented in exercise, in yoga, in Tai Chi, in Qi Kong. I've experimented with a lot of these. They're very, very personal thing, because everybody's motion is very personal. There's some people that love badminton. There's some people that love jogging. There's some people that can't take jogging. And what do they love? They love to swim. They love to row. They love to do badminton. And there's some people that are very, very powerfully attached to certain, what I would call intentional body movement. And that's the idea. In all of the, we call Eastern motion healing, which is done through Qi Kong or Tai Chi, simple, slow movements. If you go on the internet and you watch some of these masters, you see the perfection of motion. That's what karate is. That's what kung fu is, jiu-jitsu, and all the other arts that are part of the way of mastering the fight or flight movement, because that's what it is. The fight or flight is now that level of running away, of motion. We want to master our motion. So if we start to master our motion by doing things such as any one of the movement, they can be the simplest thing. Do movement. Last week there was one of the teachers here, one of the speakers, who said that she started to think that, wow, while I'm even doing something, I can, take my weights and I can just go like this with my arm, right? We need to be present, but on the other hand, we should be a moving being. And that's where we see it's kind of interesting. Your life starts totally, totally still with no movement. In the womb of a mother, it starts in the early stages with almost no motion. And as the child grows, there's more and more motion, even within the womb. And then the moment the child comes out, he's very much moved. But he can't crawl, he can't walk. He gets to a certain age where there's more motion. And then at a certain age, we start less motion. And then we need to maybe adjust our motion and our emotion, right? A generation of E, right? The E-mobile, the E-bike. There's motion and there's emotion. Emotion is the motion of our internal world. We want to adjust our motion. We want to adjust our motion to fit what we are and who we are at this point. But we can't deny that we are a mover and we need to move. I see a lot of people, a lot of elderly people during the corona now closed down. A lot of them, I think in my eyes, the few that I visited, even I have very close to a big rabbi who's older, I see that it does a number on an older person when he doesn't get out and get out and about. Just go out and just walk in nature, walk in your neighborhood. Just move your body. Don't be afraid to move your body, because moving is healing itself. It is one of our most humanistic acts, is the act of motion. And intentional motion is even more powerful. That's how the whole Eastern traditions developed the power of these very, very, very exact motions. They wanted to learn from even nature itself how to act like a praying mantis, or how to act like a lion or a leopard, or any snake a human being has. It's kind of funny, the Talmud, which is probably one of the most in-depth composium of ideas that was ever created, talks a bit about this in many places. It talks about even during prayer that a person at a certain point in the prayer is supposed to bow down like a snake. And the Talmud goes in to discuss exactly how a person should bow down and act like a snake. What part of their body should go down? What part of their spine should move? When should their head come up? Because there is something to be learned from the whole creation itself in our way of acting. And that was part of the wisdom of the ancient Eastern world, which had mastered this motion and this movement. There is even somebody in Israel who I saw once who claims that there is an ancient art, an ancient Judaic art of martial arts. I couldn't really understand exactly where he got martial arts, somewhere based, but they're definitely, we know historically that some of the greatest warriors and combat were some of the people from the Bible. So therefore, there's no question that any kind of motion. And again, it's kind of interesting because true martial arts isn't to hurt another person, and it isn't to really do combat. It's to master, it's self-mastery. It's mastering ourselves through motion. If a person moves in a certain and very intent way, they come to master themselves. The next level that we're moving to is wind. Wind, in my eyes, is where the biggest challenge starts to become. Because many of us, thank God, we have our, exercise schedule. We're doing that motion. We're walking. We're doing things. And thank God, if they listen enough to Ginat, they will learn how to eat properly. But what we're looking to now deal with our wind spirit. The wind spirit is more complex because the wind spirit of a person represents just the opposite desire. As we saw, the water wants to always go down, and the ground always wants to rest. Both of them want to reach naturally downward towards resting. So we combat them by active motion and by eating and by doing. Whereas the wind spirit and the fire spirit of our body has the opposite. It wants to just all the time do action and be frivolous. So if we take one example of that in our wind spirit is speaking. We respect people that have a command of their language and can talk in a way that is meaningful and is not chit-chat, right? It's nice to chit-chat sometimes, but people that just chatter, you ever got one of those guys? I had a guy for years over here where I live in Petah, and this guy, whenever you see him, he's just talking on this and that and this and that and talking about people and talking about that. What are you just talking? The power of speech is so powerful. That was what I learned last week when it was one lady that was teaching about creative writing. Our power there's nothing else in the creation that can take and form words as we form words that represent so much. I remember even my teacher in 12th grade, he came down on me. Now me and the whole class, a bunch of yeshiva boys from the thing, and he says, you guys are gonna end up nothing. He says, why? You don't really know English well, because you're a bunch of high school almost dropouts. He says, you barely talk Yiddish. You surely don't know Hebrew. He says, to be a human being, you have to have the command of a language. That's power. It's so powerful. So a person can spend and rectify his wind spirit by learning how to talk. There's another almost secret in talking. One of the greatest secrets in talking is silence. It's very powerful. I had one big rabbi that I was close to, he died a few years ago, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, a very, very deep man, and a very, very deep thinker, especially in the esoteric parts of the Torah and Bible. And he speaks, and he would a lot of time would stop and almost like pondering and thinking, and then he would continue. So one of his students, when he wanted to tape the rabbi, he got a bunch of tapes, but he saw that the tape of an hour, if he would use a special technology, modern technology, he would be able to cut out a lot of the empty space between all of his talking. So he came to the Rabbi Shapiro and he said to him, Rabbi, I would like to use this technology. I can cut your class of an hour into a half an hour because there's a lot of these gaps and spaces in between. It could compress the time. He just went like this. He says, you don't understand. He said, I transfer more information in the silence than I do in the words themselves. There's something very powerful in silence. Even recently, when my mother was passed away a few months ago, 3 months ago, there's this idea of coming to Menachem Avil to bring, how do you say it in English? Visit the mourner, visit the people that are mourning. And one of the concepts there is to just sit and be quiet, because silence is very, very powerful. That's part of the way we can rectify the wind spirit of ourselves. But I have found after many years, probably the strongest, thank you, probably one of the strongest things that we have. And I think it is the most powerful part of our bridge system that integrates all of these systems together. The most powerful one that we have is our ability to breathe. Why do I say that? There's a few reasons, but we'll start with the first one. In our mind, we can live in the future and we can live in the past. In our breathing, it is very, very present. It's a very, very powerful instrument to bring us to the present. When a person breathes, you can never breathe really truly for the future. Maybe for a few moments. You take a breath and you got a little bit of air there for a minute, but we really breathe in the moment. And in fact, I'm going to teach most people a trick here. They probably don't even know a simple thing that most people discover. They're just sitting and all of a sudden a thought comes up, a worry, or worry about the future or something hurtful of the past. They will probably stop breathing. They will stop taking a breath for a short moment. And that is a disconnect from the real essence of the person. We are truly our presence, that we are present at the moment. And that is what we're after, is to be present really here now. Breathing has that ability. Why? Breathing is the bridge that integrates the autonomic system. If a person gets a knock in the head and he gets knocked out, he falls on the floor, he'll continue breathing. And when you're sleeping at night, you continue breathing, meaning there's a certain side of breathing that is completely automatic, that you don't have to control. Yet on the other hand, it is the part that we have control over. We can't hold the breath. We can't control how we breathe. We can breathe deeply. We can breathe very shallow. And most people that, as I said before, the chatter in the world of speech is shallow breathing in the world of breathing. A person breathes very shallow. Most people are breathing very shallow. We were intended to take more oxygen. Don't go cheap on it. It's free in the meantime until the government figures out a way to charge us. But what? The air is free. And you can take big, deep breaths. And everybody knows across the boards, slow, deep breaths relaxes the person. It relaxes the inner chatter, the inner noise. Breathing exercises are, in my eyes, probably one of the greatest healing powers that can integrate us with our spirit of our wind spirit, our ruach. It can integrate and all the way down to the lowest levels of a person. But it also has a very, very powerful effect on the level above that. And the level above that is the level of, we call neshama. Neshama means the soul, what we would call the brain, the fire, the highest energy consumer in the person. That part of us is the part that is probably the most elusive for us to rectify. And why is that? Because it's in a place that's so hidden even from the person themselves. We have so little control over our thoughts. Our food is difficult control. But why is our food difficult control? Because of our thoughts. Why is our emotion difficult to control? Because of our thoughts. Why is our mouth and our breathing? Because of our thoughts. It is ultimately the top master of our human pyramid is our mind, leading us towards our true self. So what are the things that a person can do to help their mind? How to really become a master of the mind? And again, not allow the mind, because the mind runs at 900, 1,000 miles an hour. It's never stops. It's a constant river of thoughts. And that's what mindfulness or meditation tries to teach a person, how to quiet the mind. Again, as we said earlier, the water, the ground is looking for rest. We need to activate them. The wind is looking to be shallow. our mind is looking for chatter. It's looking for a constant river of never-ending thoughts that are totally unconnected, unrelevant, not helpful. And what do we need to do? We need to take control of our thought. And the way to control that is by quieting the mind. Quieting the mind, over the last week we had learned from a lot of people, there were some people so impressive, as I could feel these people are really masters. They've mastered it themselves, and they see they have a powerful ability to help others. What is it to quiet ourselves? We need to quiet our inner being, to really be able then to think and feel more than anything what we really are, who we really are, what we really want. When you calm that inner chatter and all of those thoughts, and that was what I had in short last week talked a bit about in pain, the ideas of Dr. Sarno, the ideas that there are emotions, they are that background chatter, those unintegrated emotions that are talked about by an emotional code. Somebody last week taught the emotional code. These ideas are all in emotions that can make us unwell. Why? Because those emotions are like chatter in the background. It's kind of freaky, I can tell you. I remember it here in Petah Tikva. This is a place, it's like Manhattan. I live on a main street. It never stops. There's no quietness. There's never any quiet. And the corona had brought a bit of quietness. And I was watching on the Chag Pesach, Rishon, on the first day of Passover. And I opened the window and I went outside, and it was such quiet. And the whole world was now talking to me. The birds were talking to me. The world was talking. There's so much to hear, but there's so much background noise. But the biggest background noise that blinds us and blots out any of our emotional abilities and our ability to really find who we are and heal ourselves, what is that? That is the chatter of our mind, our emotions, those thoughts, that constant living in the past or worrying about the future. Therefore, all the ideas of mindfulness, which are very powerful, whether they're meditation, mindful, even you wouldn't believe, there are very powerful things like singing, which are somewhat mindful. These things are in ancient ideas and Eastern, and I found sources even in the biblical and Torah ideas, that there was periods of time that it was much more common, the idea of meditation, even in Judaism, and there was ideas of mantras, of repetition of the same sound over and over and over again. Because why? It quiets that inner chatter and allows us to ultimately address ourselves. In the last few minutes that we have, I want to turn, I don't know how many of the people here are healers, but I want to talk about just for a few minutes to the healers here and the helpers about how can you help people on the journey. So I'm going to first start with something that I feel is so paramount in being a healer, a helper, somebody who wants to help others, and ultimately we can turn it towards ourselves. I'm going to read you off a tape that I listened of Carl Rogers. For those that don't know, he was a major person in the world of psychology. He really fought against the ideas of Freud in looking at humanity in a very negative eye. He turned the bowl over and he said that human beings, their very essence is truly good and not negative. And he, on the other hand, really changed the way that really is supposed to help people. And he talks to teachers, counselors, anybody that's involved with trying to reach out to somebody else. And he bases it on basically 3 ideas of the most critical things that you have if you really want to help somebody else. The first one, I'm going to read it to you. It's kind of interesting. His wording is beautiful. Is the idea of empathy. Empathy is paramount in being able to help another human being. So I'm going to read this. The empathetic process means you enter the private perceptual world of another and be thoroughly at home in it. It involves being sensitive, moment to moment, to the changing felt meanings which flow in the other person. Feelings of fear, of rage, of tenderness or confusion. It means temporary living in his life, ever delicately, moving about without making judgments, sensing the meanings he is barely aware of, while not uncovering that he is totally unaware of. because that would be too threatening. It includes communicating your sensings with fresh and unfrightened eyes of elements that he or she is fearful of. It includes frequently checking the accuracy of your sensings, and being guided by the reactions of the other. You are a confident companion in his or her world by pointing to the possible meanings that he or she is experiencing. You help focus on these references so as to move forward in his or her experience. It is being with another in a way that means you must lay aside. This is so critical. I can tell you as a religious person, this is so critical, he says. It is being with another in a way that means you must lay aside for the time being the views and the values that you hold for yourself and enter the world of the other without prejudice. In some sense, it means you must lay yourself totally aside. This can only be done by one that is secure enough in himself that he won't get lost and what may turn out to be the often strange world of the other, and can comfortably return to his world when he wishes. It's Carl Rogers. I mean, it's every time I get emotional thinking about it, is that you have to be able to reach into the other person and truly be empathetic, and think about and feel the other person's need. And true healing of another person is not lecturing other people. It's reaching and being there as almost a mirror to the other human being. You are a mirror for the other human being. And even another place says that the only way that we can truly help another person is to act as a compassionate mirror to another. Two other points he makes, which are really important, if you want to really have effect on other people and help them move forward in their health. The person needs to feel that you're genuine and that you're real. That is so important. I know it in the world of teaching, and I've taught parenting for a lot of years, and children and all human beings have a very strong internal compass, and they can sense when people are genuine or they're doing it for other interests. And that is monumental in the ability to help another. And the third one is he says that you show genuine interest in the other person, that you're really interested in what they have to say and what they feel. And when another person is not well and they come to you, then you should really feel. It's a lot easier, I could tell you, honestly, from myself, a person that at times I was not well, and you have that certain empathy and that ability to feel the place of the other. But every human being is so complex and so individual. And that is the most beautiful thing of all of humanity, is our own individualness, our ability to be ourselves, truly who we are. So as we move through the rungs of what I call the hierarchy, from the ground to our water, to our spirit, to our fire, we ultimately reach ourself. The self of the person is what we're really after. What are they really after? Who are they? What do they really want from this short worldly stay that we are privileged to have? Those feelings are the feelings that I wanted to bestow a bit on other people. This was an attempt to try to retape. If it didn't get taped this time, it's also good.
It is.
Those that heard, I'm very thankful to you. I'm again very thankful to Ginat and Sheldon. I understand now that Ginat and Sheldon are going to be starting a macrobiotic forum in some form or way. You get the updates, I'm sure, in your emails and whatever other ways of communication. And as we said then, it's important, the group, it's important the connection with other people, because we are social beings. And that's a powerful way for us to really, truly see within ourselves. When you show concern for the other, you get a real look, hopefully, within yourself. So again, my blessings to Sheldon and Ginat and to the whole group. I was listening. Thank you again. Hope you had patience for my ideas. We hope that if every person just even a tiny bit improves, that's all we need is tiny bit of motion. Because as soon as you get that little bit of motion, whatever it is, any tiny change, don't knock yourself down. You improved your diet a teeny bit, a little bit more movement, doing something for your spirit, a little bit more control of our mind. That will definitely bring about, hopefully, better health, better well-being for all the people here. Thank you. And that's what I got to say.
Bravo, bravo. Thank you.